Right on my right here, that's where these power stations were. This is where we are.
Sure, that's
This is
crazy.
where we are. It was literally just here. This is where we are.
So these four chimneys were literally here.
Just here.
Bro, this is crazy. Look at that.
Just across this building here, it's called the Turbine Hall. Turbine Hall. This is where the generation of the electricity was done.
The chimneys, they're next to the diamond building.
Workers Museum, formerly known as Workers Library and Museum. This is one site in Johannesburg that the city has really invested in. This is pretty new. There used to be just a gate here and then you just walk into this, but they've established this welcoming spot and this kind of like a, what's the word?
An entrance.
An entrance, yeah. As earlier mentioned, this is an example of showing you a compound system where workers used to live. So all municipal workers, the ones who usually actually used to work in the sewerage system, and remember back then there was a bucket system. So they used to carry literally from house to house and put into trucks and then go and dump it somewhere because there were no flushing systems back then. So this was the structure of the building. This house here was for the Induna. The Induna is basically a supervisor. So he was in charge of the workers here. Order, you make sure that the rules are being followed. So he had certain privilege more than the other workers. And he also had the privilege to punish whoever broke the rules, because there were rules. No alcohol was allowed. No women were allowed, those kind of things. This was revamped, so it also houses a museum, and sometimes they have exhibitions here. So this is a permanent exhibition. This is part of the museum exhibitions. This is more immersive because you get to be in the space that used to operate as a compound, as opposed to your apartheid museum. It's a new building altogether. Very safe. It's within the Newtown Precinct. Yeah, it showcases the life experiences of migrant. This is a very popular image showing men traveling by foot from different parts of the world coming to Johannesburg. This was before they were trained.
1800s part and the 1940s to present.
Yeah, the history, as you can see, 1886, that's when the discovery of gold happened. This is really important, the hut and poll tax. So in order to force the men to come to the city, they had to impose a hut tax from their homesteads. So the introduction of the homesteads was a mechanism to actually force young men to come and work in the city. Because you must remember, the kind of currency that was used back then, there was no, like the monetary currency that we use. There was still a bartering system. People were self-sustainable. There was subsistence farming, so they didn't really need money to survive. So they were self-sustainable. So the powers that be decided that they must introduce a way that would require people to go and earn money. So they introduced the hut tax and the poll tax. So that forced then young men to go and work in the cities. The introduction of the poverty cycle. You create a problem that requires people to go and get that money. Once they get that money, it's then you've already caught them in a system that makes them reliant on that system. You've already trapped them. Because these people are self-sustainable, produce their own clothing. The only thing that preoccupied them was just sustaining their family and growing their family and, looking after their cattle. That's it. So the movement. You remember I told you earlier on about various parts of the world, the neighboring countries, all converging to Johannesburg, right? This is the area. So now they came from all parts of the world. This is Lesotho. This is now what is known as the Eastern Cape. This is KZN, Zululand. This is Swaziland. This is Mozambique. This is Zimbabwe. Just further up is your Malawi and Tanzania and so forth. So all these people were being drawn towards the
converge.
Conversion towards Johannesburg. And there was a recruitment agency that I mentioned earlier. Interesting fact. Okay, cool. Before it was known as the Bureau of Employment Agency, it was called the Witwatersrand Native Labour Association, WENELA.
Sure.
Yeah, WENELA. So it was a recruitment agency that was recruiting all these men from across Southern Africa. And back to, how some of the influences from this discovery got to, establish foundations for apartheid, right? You already have this establishment of WENELA, which was solely for mine workers, but because the city was growing, the town was growing, there were other industries. But then how do you then control the influx of black people? So you introduced the pass laws, which were introduced in 1896. This was now to try and control. So you had to have a reason to be in Johannesburg. So if you hear, it's either you're working in the mines, or you're working in the kitchens, or you're working in the gardens, or So that system was meant for that. So how it started, black workers had to wear metal badges on their arms to indicate that they worked for a master. Otherwise, they would be jailed. They also had to obtain district passes in order to move out from one mine to another. Workers' resistance. But the first one was...
the origin of unions, basically.
Yeah, the origins of unions. The first one was mainly for white workers. There were no black people involved in the first strike in the mines. It was called the Workers' Resistance. And they converged just outside where we are. It's called Mary Fitzgerald Square. This was a very famous gathering space for all forms of protest or demonstrations and stuff like that. So this square is very known for that.
Wow.
And then as time went by, because the white workers were only fighting for their own rights, their own interests as white workers. But then black people started organizing themselves as well.
Sure. Who's doing the fighting for the Chinese rights? Because I see that a lot of...
The Chinese also had their first strike in 19...
Wow.
Because remember, they felt, the WENELA guys or Teba, they felt that they need to get, wherever they could get labor, they will go. So they went to China, got labor there, and same thing, Chinese were worked under very, horrific conditions, working conditions. So they were the second group to strike. And they had to stop. Their strike was effective because after that they decided not to recruit any Chinese anymore. And then after that, some of them then branched out to do other things. They were not as restricted as the Africans. Okay, another interesting fact, poll tax. The first rebellion, but this happened in Natal because the Bambata rebellion. He instigated the rebellion against the poll tax. Because remember, the point of the poll tax was to drive men from their homesteads to come and work into the cities.
Wow.
So this was one of the resistances, most significant resistances in black history in South Africa. Because he led an uprising against the Natal government to say we are not going to pay taxes. And because the taxes were important in driving people away into the cities, the government fought them nail and tooth. So they knew that him stopping that movement is going to affect the growth of the mines. Eventually, he did get killed, and
But he forever an idol.
Yeah, the Bambata Rebellion is a very significant event in the war against resistance in South Africa. So the Land Act is still connected to the demand for labor, right? If this is the map, right? All wherever it's black is where it was reserved for black people, right? But before that, this was owned by black people. So if people have got land, they've got a freedom, and if you take away their land, then you make them reliant.
On the system,
Yeah,
on the rules.
yeah. And what was the cause for that? Is the demand for labor. So the discovery of gold in South Africa is very significant because it catapulted the social engineering of what we know as South Africa today. Land dispossession, because mining companies have so much influence and power, they could go to government and say, we need this kind of policy. Can you put this policy in place so that we are able to destabilize the black population so that they are forced to come and work for us? So a lot of laws were introduced in order to sustain the mines. So I always say the discovery of gold in South Africa actually was the one that...
They took the freedoms away from the natives.
Yeah. You get to the mines, what happens? You've been recruited, young men, here you are. You get to the mine, boom, boom, here we are. It's like cattle, now you have to be subdivided. You're going to this mine, you are going to this mine. You are being recorded, you're given a number, medicals. They have to take the healthiest men, right?
Yeah.
You have to check your health. So
I just think the worst thing you can take out of a man is his dignity.
Yeah. This is the Mary Fitzgerald Square I was talking about. So it's very famous as a gathering space for protests. Here, this is the isolation room. So if you...
solitary confinement?
Yeah.
Well, at least there's a window.
Yeah. So you'll be locked in here to think about your problems, not your corner.
If you were troublesome, they would lock you in this room. Maybe you came back here drunk or late, or had a fight at work in the morning. The security guards will unchain you, and if they wish, they would just pour a bucket of water over you, even during winter. Then you could meet the manager of the chances are you will get fired. And then you become fired. They strip you out of your permit.
Yeah.
And you
Go
need
back
to
where you came from.
Type of conditions. I don't know. That will be a blessing.
And if that punishment was not enough, that tree over there, you up into that tree.
And they'll whip you.
And
What?
whip you. So this is another example.
The fire that you mentioned there.
Yes.
So that's, you got a sewing machine there.
Yeah.
So this was, they take rest here. They will fix their clothes. They will talk. Yo, man. You got.
Mentioned to you, the enterprising workers.
Yeah.
They would make those clothes that I mentioned.
And they make their own money also here.
Yeah. So you take off cuts of whatever clothes and put them together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these images that you see here, it's exactly in this building. They didn't have showers.
Yeah.
They would take baths on little buckets. You know? So these were like the modern hostels, but you be the judge. So there was no sense of privacy or anything. And then there's men who are in their 50s and 60s. This is where the stripping of dignity was exercised. Whereby a man as old as your father or your grandfather, you'll be sitting here and taking a bath together naked. These where you relieve yourself. This is it. I mean, this looks normal, right? Looks like any public toilet, right? Should look like. Great. But let's come through this side. When you needed to relieve yourself, this is what you had at your disposal. Yeah, my name is Moha once again. We're at Workers Library and Museum. Thank you for joining me. These are showing you some of my favorite places to explore the heritage of Johannesburg. And I hope whenever you're around, you can pop by.
It's important to see these places to have a better of an educational background about transport. But again, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Comment down below, share this, subscribe, destroy that like button, and I will see you in the next LivinginSAtv video.